The screen is blending red, trillions of dollars in charity man funds, generation wealth vaporized in a matter of days. You log into your brokerage account and the number look like a terrifying glitch. But it isn't a glitch, it is the brutal, inevitable snap of a trap that was set years ago in a plain second. The artificial intelligence bubble didn't just burst. It dragged the entire illusion of the modern financial system down into the abyss which it. I'm standing in the metaphorical barricade right now, watching the panic unfold, but my portfolio, it is perfectly intact. I'm not bleeding, not because I got lucky, and not because I possess a crystal ball. I survived because I saved the Thunderhouse burning bull, and while everyone else was fighting to get inside, I quietly walked out the back door. This is a story of how the greatest wealth creation engine in human history became a financial death trap, and why I had to abandon everything I knew about investing to survive it. For 35 years, the gospel of Wall Street was simple, comforting and ultimately blinding. They told us to buy the S&P 500, close our eyes, and let compound interest do the rest. It was called positive investing. It was the ultimate financial peace of mind. But in the shadow of the boom, passive investing mutated into something deeply dangerous. We all thought we were buying a broadly diversified plans of the global economy. We were dead wrong. We were actually buying a fragile house of cards. A handful of massive attached tents have swallowed the index, carrying the weight of the entire world on their shoulders. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, they didn't just respond the markets, they become the markets. Index funds were no longer a safety net, they were a massive, blink funnel, pouring the whole life, diving into the exact same server farm in Silicon Valley. The harder the market climbed, the more the larger become. I looked at the chart one evening, watching their tail investor pour her leverage into their her companions, and I realized a cold truth. I wasn't an investor anymore. I was a hostage. I was entirely dependent on Silicon Valley's ability to constantly exist mathematically impossible exceptions. That was the first fundamental shift in the strategy. I stopped paying the bears. I walked away from market cap dense illusions and shifted my capital into a equal-weighting index. If one gain stumbled, if one earning repair missed the mark by a fraction of a percent, I was not going to let it drag me into the bank. I was not going to let it drag me into the dark. But as it dug deeper, I realized that the road went for beyond just stock concentration. The entire market was hallucination. Everyone was so mesmerized by the software, the generate chatbots, the deepfakes, the algorithms that could write code in seconds, that they forgot we actually live in a psychical world. Wall Street was pricing these AI companies as if they existed in a vacuum, generation infinity money from infinity intelligence. But AI is instinctively hungry, it consumes electricity and scale. Humanity has seen signs the birth of the Industrial Revolution. It demands massive. Everyone was so mesmerized by the software, the generate chatbot, the deepfake, the algorithm that could write code in the second, that they forgot we actually live in a psychical world. Wall Street was pricing their AI companies as if they existed in a vacuum, generating infinity money from infinity intelligence. But AI is incredibly hungry, it consumes electricity on a scale humanity hasn't seen since the birth of the Industrial Revolution. Of the market, small and mid-cap companies were being left for dead. Wall Street are abandoning them. It demands massive sprawling data center, thousands of miles of heavy copper wire, millions of dollars of fresh water for cooling, and a global power grid that was already pushing it to its absolute breaking point. Really, the desperate crowns their life, saving as the software developers. I started following the psychical work. I shifted my capital out of the overwhelming neon-lit tech hubs of America and started betting on the grim, unglamorous reality of the psychical world. I bought heavily into emerging market energy and structure and the flagging comprehend that actually digs the resolution out of the dirt. I realized that all the rule of the gold rush. The real winners are never the miners crushing the gold. The real winners are the programists selling the pickaxes, the shovels, and the electricity to keep the light on in the tunnels. As the bubble swelling to its breaking point, a quiet massacre was happening beneath the surface, starving them of capital because they weren't building billion-dollar language models. They went searching, they didn't make hardness, but this was the greatest misdirection of the IRA. The true losing power of artificial intelligence was never in selling it, it was in using it. I started hunting in the graveyard of small-cap value stocks. I found boring traditional business, logistic companies, regional manufacturers, ruthlessly international AI, to slash their opportunity cost and double their profit margins. They didn't need to invent the future, they just needed to rent it from the tech giants. With the massive compression forming a bloody $1 trillion war for dominance, their small underdogs were silenced, becoming the most efficient profit engine in the modern market. I backed the companies that nobody wanted, right before they became the companies that the economy desperately needed. Then the music stopped. It wasn't a catastrophic global war or a sudden pandemic that brought it down. It was just the crushing weight of gravity. The debt required to build the AI utopia became too heavy for the system to bear. Inflation, the ghost withdrawal, central bank had vanished forever. Stepped back into the room, fading on massive government, deficing on the element instantly, demand for raw energy. Blue-collar service providers, their underdogs were quality. On of the tech gains massive their currently earning, not by much, just a fraction of a percent, but in a market priced for absolute perfection. Perfection is a fraudulent thing. The hard frequency trading algorithms punish net, and then came the margin call. Millions of retail investors had borrowed money, leveraged to the heat, terrifying of massive out on the endless. Rally. Then the market disappeared. The brokers didn't ask for patents. They forced them to sell. It was a vicious, self-fulfilling avalanche of forces liquidation. The S&P 500, top-heavy and structurally compromised, snapped in half. But here is the twist, here is the dark secret of the crash that ruled financial media won't tell you. The wealth didn't actually disappear. Wealth never truly disappears. It simply transferred hands. The AI revolution didn't fall. The software still worked perfectly. The data center still hummed in the dark, but the market violently wore up to the realizing that the value of the future didn't belong to the coder who wrote the digital algorithms. It blended to the people who owned the hand psychical assets required to run them. The digital mirage ever-potent and cold hard reality violently presented itself. Those who held nothing but digital promise and Blomentech stock were repeated clan. I survived the Kornege because I accept this really before the market for the Me Too. Long before the sky fell, I had gap against the entire system. I triggered the excitement of the digital boom for the cold security of psychical assets. I built heavy position in gold, Barbados rails per fast, but on assets with a 5,000 years track record of not going to zero when governments and comprench fell. I stock clipped cash, holding onto dry powder healing. Everyone else was loading their own fine. I made absolutely sure that no matter how far the market loomed dead, no matter how deep the panic went, I would never ever be forced to sell. The AI investing trap was never about high technology. It was about human grandmasking itself as inevitable innovation. It was about forgetting that the digital world still needs the psychical earth to survive. The dust is still setting, but the next national cycle is burning right now, taking root in the head of the old one. The rules of the game have fundamentally changed. The era of lazy passive investing is dead and buried. If you want to survive that comes next, you have to wake up, step out of the digital illusion, and follow the money back to the real world. Are you still holding on to the ghost or the S&P 500, hoping the post will save you? Are you ready to build a portfolio that can actually survive the brutal psychical reality of the future? Think carefully about your answer. Your next move might be your loss. Subscribe in this channel and have a nice day.